Yo, what's up? Andrew Mahone here with Tricky Jim at Full Grip Games. Today I'm going to be showing you how to build and play your very own Pokemon cube. I've been cube drafting for years. It's easily my favorite way to play the Pokemon trading card game. I'm really stoked about this video. I've wanted to make it for a long time, and I'm confident now that I finally have the expertise to show the world what Pokemon cubing is all about. A cube is a curated pool of cards that a group of players draft from in order to create decks. After players are done creating their decks, they'll pair up and compete against one another until finally the player with the best record is deemed the winner of the cube. After winning a cube, you're granted unlimited bragging rights amongst your friends and even get to post on Twitter about how cool your deck was. After the tournament is over, you dismantle the decks and reassemble the cube so that it can be drafted from again. After a lot of trial and error, I found that the ideal size for a Pokemon cube is 360 cards, with each player building a 40 card deck and having basic energy provided for them like there would be at a pre-release, and then playing 4 prize games. With a 360 card cube, you can have 8 players each draft 3 packs of 15 cards, or you can have 6 players draft 4 packs of 15 cards each. Now you can have a cube that's much bigger than 360 cards. My first cube was almost 1,000 cards, which creates a more variable and less consistent experience, since you'll only be drafting a portion of the cube if you're drafting 3 or 4 packs of 15 cards, or it'll just be a much longer experience if you're drafting the entire cube if it's that big. I highly recommend a 360 card cube as it's quick and easy for first time drafters to pick up and also creates an efficient drafting experience for all players. The Pokemon trading card game is naturally challenging to draft from because of its evolution rules. For instance, if you draft a Charizard, you're also going to have to draft a Charmander and a Charmeleon in order to get the Charizard into play. Unlike Magic the Gathering, which was built to be drafted straight from the booster pack, a Pokemon draft pool has to be much more carefully curated. One workaround that Pokemon players have come up with in order to ease the evolution requirement is something called Mutant Drafting. Mutant Drafting means that any basic of a type can evolve into any stage 1 of that same type and eventually become any stage 2 of that same type. For instance, you could have a Ponyta evolve into an Arcanine and eventually become a Charizard, or you could have an Oddish evolve into a Weeping Bell and eventually become a Venusaur if they're all the same type. This lends itself really well to something called a singleton cube, which is something carried over from Magic the Gathering. It's when every card in the cube is a one-of card. Personally, I found that this lends itself much better to Magic the Gathering than it does for Pokemon, and even though it is a valid way to build a Pokemon cube, I've had much more fun embracing the traditional evolution rules in my personal Pokemon cube. To make traditional evolution work in a cube format, evolution lines need to be relatively thick so that players can find the basics and stage 1s that they'll need for their stage 2 Pokemon when crafting their decks. It's not uncommon to have 6 basics, 5 stage 1s, and 4 stage 2s of a single evolution line in a traditional evolution cube. Most types in this kind of cube revolve around one thick evolution line and are supported by basics and sometimes complementary evolutions. On average, a 360 card cube should have 15 to 40 Pokemon of each type depending on their versatility. As a general rule, there should be less Pokemon of types that are non-splashable and more Pokemon that are splashable. For instance, in my cube, Base Set Blastoise is the primary evolution line for water-type Pokemon, of which there are 19 total, and they all complement the Rain Dance ability on Base Set Blastoise. In contrast, I have 41 colorless type Pokemon in my cube, since they are easily drafted into any type of deck. If you are embarking on building your first cube, I highly recommend building a traditional evolution cube. It's usually the most affordable, it's the easiest to build, and also the simplest for new players to pick up. There are over 11,000 unique Pokemon cards in existence. How could you possibly narrow it down to just 360 cards for a cube? The selection process is a ton of fun. It's where all the creativity happens. You get to really ream through every single Pokemon card ever existed and pick the perfect 360 for your cube. In order to get things started, a lot of cube creators will pick a theme. I've seen gym cubes, I've seen non-EX, non-GX cubes, I've seen heart gold, soul, silver cubes, I've seen cubes entirely from the sun and moon block. It really is up to you wherever you're feeling inspired. My cube started as a Wizards of the Coast cube, since the old base to Neo cards are some of my favorite cards in existence. But then as my cube continued to evolve over time, I started throwing in early EX stuff, and now I just put whatever I want in my cube because it's my cube and they're my rules, so why not? If you're looking for an awesome resource to look up Pokemon cards, I highly recommend PokemonCards.com. It's PKMNcards.com. It's a super easy to use database. You can look up images of every single card ever printed dating all the way back to base set. I use this website to help build my cube and definitely recommend it. The link will be in the description below. One of the most challenging parts about building a Pokemon cube is finding a good balance between Pokemon and trainers. How much of each card should I include? I've been testing my cube for years, and I found that in a 360 card cube, about 50% Pokemon and 50% trainers and special energy is a great ratio and will allow players to construct well-balanced decks. If you're interested in seeing my cubes list, I'll drop it in the description below. It's always a work in progress, but I think it'll always be a work in progress. That's the beauty of cube building. It is a ton of fun to play though, and I'm really stoked about it, so make sure to check it out. One of my main problems with a singleton Pokemon cube is that they don't really have the consistency cards to make them work. I think that 50 to 60 draw cards is optimal in a 360 card cube with about 30 or so search cards. This makes the games fun to play. With 8 players drafting from 360 cards and 50 draw cards in the mix, each player will end up with about 6 or so draw cards. That's if they're playing nicely. And if players are aggressively drafting the draw cards, they'll end up with maybe 8 to 10, and if you're prioritizing other things, maybe you end up with 4 or so. An average of 6 draw cards is wonderful for 40 card decks. You don't really need so much more than that, but it is very important to make sure that there are enough draw cards in the cube to make the games fun to play for all players. Nobody likes to open a dead hand. In order to help you get started with your own cube, I made this chart to help map things out. One of the most important things to remember in any cube is to include a healthy amount of recovery cards. In a 40 card Pokemon deck, it's very easy to deck out, and you don't want too many games to end because of deck out. So make sure to include recovery cards and let everybody who's playing know how valuable they are. Once you've built your cube, all you need is some friends and a ton of sleeves, and you're ready to roll. Start by shuffling the cube. This is easily the most laborious part of cube drafting, and one of the other reasons to limit your cube to only 360 cards. Randomizing 360 cards can be a pain, so divide the cube up into stacks and pass it around the table, shuffling and exchanging chunks of cards with your friends. Once you've shuffled, divide your cube up into a predetermined number of stacks. If you have 8 players in a 360 card cube, each player should get 3 random stacks of 15 cards that they will place face down in front of them. When all players are ready, they should arrange themselves in a circle so that the draft can begin. Each player looks at their first stack of 15 cards, selects a card that they want for their drafting pool, and passes the rest of the cards to the player on their left. This process of simultaneously selecting and passing continues until all of the cards in the first stacks have been chosen. Once players are done selecting their cards from the first stacks, they may pick up their draft pool and look to see what they have selected so far, and also make a mental plan for what they still need to form their decks. Once all players are ready, the next stack is opened and each player selects a card and passes to the right until all cards from the second stack are depleted. This process of opening stacks, selecting, and passing continues in a left-right-left motion until all of the cards have been drafted. After the drafting process, players are given a reasonable amount of time to build their 40-card decks from the cards they've drafted and the basic energy provided by the cube creator. Once decks are completed, it's time to play. Depending on how much time you have and the number of players, you can either do Swiss round pairings or a round-robin tournament. I usually like round robin if time allows it, since it allows each player to play against every other player and see what creative combinations they came up with. And that about does it for my cube draft video. If you're looking to build your own Pokemon cube, just dive in head first. Trial and error is the best way to build any cube. You're not going to know if a combination's too broken or if a combination's too weak until you give it a shot. It's one of the most fun parts about building a cube is playing with your friends and then arguing, oh, that card's too broken, this card's not powerful enough, and so on on and so forth. And that's part of what keeps cubes evolving over the years and what makes it so fun and engaging to play over and over again. As I said before, Pokemon cubing is one of the most fun ways to play the Pokemon trading card game, and I definitely recommend it. Thank you all so much for watching the video. I'm going to drop the link to my own cube list in the description below if you want to check it out, use it as inspiration, so on and so forth. But I'm going to be dropping a video on my own cube here shortly as well. Make sure to like the video, sub to the channel, ring that bell, and check out fullgripgames.com for all of your trading card game needs, especially if you're trying to build that cube. Take it easy. Peace.